Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to the BookMan 445 channel. Today we have a special video, an idea that I haven't done yet on this channel, but I've seen floating around the BookTube space, and that is a 24-hour reading challenge. And to preface, I am a very slow reader and have a very small brain, and so I'm not someone who will have about like 60 plus books on their Goodreads by the end of the year. My goal is currently 30. But that's besides the fact. The goal of giving myself is to complete one book in this 24-hour time frame, and that book is going to be Zone 1 by Colson Whitehead. I picked up this book at a two-story Barnes& and Noble. That's pretty cool. Kind of just picked it off the shelf, um, mainly because the author, Colson Whitehead, is one that I read for one of my courses my freshman year of college. I believe it was called The Institutionist. That was a book that I read before I took any literary theory classes or before I was really even a big reader. And so I read it, and I knew that there was a lot going on. I just didn't know what what that lot was that was going on. I think it went over my head pretty much is what I'm trying to say. But I do remember liking the prose and it being still I still enjoyed the story despite my ignorance. But today we're reading Zone One by Colson Whitehead, and to give a brief overview, kind of like what the blurb says on the back. It's sort of about a pandemic, so that's has some recent relativity. Um, but it's about a pandemic that has taken over the planet Earth. I am presuming. I think it's yeah, because it talks about Manhattan. So on planet Earth, and there's a few people still left alive, and they sort of have to struggle to figure out what it means to live in this sort of very desolate situation they found themselves in as some of the like few survivors in this worldwide pandemic. Uh, Also, those infected by the COVID-19 of the story become zombies. So apparently, it's like a zombie novel, and a lot of the reviews are talking about how this isn't just zombie horror genre fiction. It's higher literature than that. Um, which I'm just poking fun at the nerds, the literary nerds. I do look forward to seeing what this book holds and what sort of literary prowess it would have. Like I said, Colson Whitehead I've read before, and I enjoyed it. I didn't even have the brain to totally comprehend what he had crafted in The Institutionist, so I would like to go back to that one. But today we're going to be reading Zone One. Before we get into the stick of this video, I would like to give an overview of how I'm going to break it down. Um, Currently, it is 8:16 on August 7th. And so I'm going to give myself till 9 tomorrow. Um, I've also read a couple pages already. I think I read to like page 6, and looks fun. It's definitely going to be something I can't skim through or rush through. I'm definitely going to take my time to read it. The prose going on is pretty elegant, pretty sweet, but also it's going to take some thinking about it, my full attention. But after every little reading session I have, maybe after I reach a certain page mark, I will come back and talk to you guys about what I think. So without further ado, let's begin. Here with the first update, guys, is currently the 8th, 1:57 p.m. I am on page 59 out of 317. So needless to say, I'm probably going to kill this challenge and complete it relatively as easily. Um, So let's actually talk about the book, what's happened so far. So, general plot, we have a character, and through our main character, Mark Spitz, we get a general idea of what is currently happening in this post-apocalyptic world. And also, we get flashbacks to what it was like when the epidemic first broke out, which is nice. Um, but yeah, so far, not too much has happened. We're just sort of getting the day to day life of a human in this new world that they found themselves in. Post the zombie apocalypse. Uh, to just keep it spoiler free, the writing is different. If I had to compare it to anything, I'd say it's like this in the school of Vandermeer, Jeff Vandermeer. Um, or maybe Vandermeer's in the school of Colson Whitehead, but you get the point. They're pretty similar. There's a lot of telling instead of showing going on here, but it works pretty well for some reason. Um, Whitehead's characterization is something I really haven't seen before, the way he approaches it, except for maybe in the Vandermeer Annihilation books that I've read, but I'm actually really enjoying it. It's one of those stories where you don't need the tag to know who spoke because these characters are so distinct. You sort of have an idea of what they would say and you know how they live and breathe, and so I really like that. I've read 57 pages. I think there's been one page break, no chapters. So there is real sort of like a continuous stream of thought, and it does jump back and forth in the timeline between paragraphs without really any indication. So it was definitely a struggle at first to sort of get into the rhythm of the read, but once I did, I'm really enjoying it now. But yeah, this book is also kind of pretty quite funny at times. There's a few times I've cracked up, like in the recent pages, there was a joke about one of the characters being really proud that they were elected the second secretary of the student council 2 years in a row. And no offense to anybody that was a secretary of the student council, I just thought it was just funny how he approached it and how prideful the character was in it. Considering they're in a zombie apocalypse now, or at the end of it, but still, yeah. So far, really enjoying it, and I'll give you guys an update after my next reading session, and we'll see where we are and how we're doing at that point. All right, everyone, back for report two on our 24-hour reading challenge. From the last update, I was around page 46, 47. Um, I'm now at page 70. Um, it is currently August 9th, 12:36 a.m. That's about 3 to 4 hours past the deadline that I set for myself. Um, so this is to say that I failed the 24-hour challenge. I did see Deadpool Wolverine though, and it was pretty good. The best thing that has came out of from Marvel in a while. I really enjoyed it. Our challenge, I have failed, but I think I will give myself another 24 hours. We'll call it a 48-hour challenge, and we'll see what kind of progress I can make on this book by this time tomorrow. Um, I do work a 4 to 11 shift, so I'm going to see how much reading I can get done before work, and then I'll update you guys in. So, yeah. All right, everyone. The next update, I have officially breached the 100 page mark. A lot of good stuff still going on in the story. I do feel that some parts drone on a little bit. I mean, they feel unnecessary to me, but I could just be the small brain that I have and my bald noggin. Just sort of like uh going into really a lot of detail of like the world and like the setting and other sort of details that may not be incredibly important to the story. Sort of makes it feel a little bit drawn out. Uh, Besides that, though, everything's still going good so far. I'm really enjoying Zone One and what it has to say about our society. That even in the midst of a zombie apocalypse, there's still some flaws that are will ultimately always be apparent in civilization and great human conglomerations and things of that sorts, other large words. But yeah, definitely should finish by tonight. If you can tell by my
This is the moment we've all been waiting for. If you've read the clickbait title, then you know what time it is. It has taken me about 8.5 to 9 months to finish Zone 1 by Colson Whitehead. How this has happened is I would take the time to come back to this book. Like, I did start this book. I got a decent amount through before I quit back in July or September. So I would read like a couple passages and I would give up, and it was kind of a never ending loop of trying and failing. I have completed this book. As you all may be wondering, BookMan, you have hair on your head now. It's maybe not a full head, that's debatable, but you definitely have more hair and a beard, a starter beard, if you will. Yeah, that's because, like I mentioned, it's this book. If you couldn't tell, is not my cup of tea, and we're gonna sort of get into why. While my ratings of Zone 1 may be low, that's not to say there isn't merit to this book. There was a way of words that Colson Whitehead has that is magnificent. To be more specific, what I mean there is I don't think the man uses one adverb the whole story. His vocabulary is so expansive that he can really find the exact word to describe exactly what he's trying to achieve. And that was something that I really appreciated, especially from like a writer's perspective. His ability to have such a large backpack to reach from to find the absolute word that just fits perfectly, and he doesn't repeat words either. You don't, you know, sometimes in other genre pulpy novels you'll see the same turn of phrase used a lot. He doesn't do that. He doesn't use the same words or adjectives a lot. He switches it up, and that was one thing I really enjoyed about this book. The book itself is not hard to read. There is a lot of words that you may have to search up, but I always love hearing a new word that I haven't heard before to add to my own vocabulary. It flows very nicely, his prose. It's just that sort of like a river that flows into not the ocean. Maybe takes a couple shortcuts and then lands in the Midwest somewhere. What I mean by that analogy, a little metaphor there, is there's a lot of pontificating in this book. I hate to say it works as a negative connotation, but I think this book gets so wrapped up in like the similes and the metaphors that Whitehead's using to sort of describe how this new world will look now. There's a lot of telling us like this apocalypse happened. This is how things run now. This is how people are reacting. This, and he's using all this in a very lyrical way, but he spends so much time using like whole passages to use this sort of like reflecting and pontification. It's sort of reminiscent of like some first person narrative books I've read, even though this is from a third person perspective point of view. It feels that way because there's so much like internal rambling. Again, I don't want to use rambling because that sounds bad, but there's a lot of internal thoughts and justifications going on, and it's hard. Part of me thinks that this is Mark Spitz, the main character's sort of take onto things, but it's told from a third person perspective, or maybe it's just Whitehead saying what he believes. But it does this a lot. It sort of has like the Catcher in the Rye kind of setup here, but instead of the first person, it is the third person perspective. So think like the Catcher in the Rye, but zombies. And that sounds like a cool idea. I'm just not sure how well Whitehead executed on that. The timeline is over the span of 3 or 4 days, but it felt like if you took out all of the, let's set aside some time, some passages to sort of talk about sort of intricacies in how people think in the psychology and how the world is set up now and how it will affect us. That if you cut that maybe in half, this book comes from like 300 pages to like 150. I mean, that's probably a hyperbole, but you get what I'm saying there. A lot of time is just spent not with the characters or not with things happening in the world. And I think that's the biggest detractor from Zone 1 for me is we're spending so much time not with these characters. Not to say Whitehead doesn't have good characterization. Each of these characters do feel distinct. I just wish I had more time to hang out with them. Uh, by the end of the book, Mark Spitz, I think, is a really good character. This is part of the reason I wouldn't give this book like a 1 star, because there is merit to the prose, merit to the few characters that appear and get time to sort of flourish all of their attributes, like Mark Spitz himself. The Mark Spitz nickname, like that was like a good. I like how we figure out his backstory, how he got the nickname. That was a part I enjoyed. But yeah, I think this book spends too much time not with characters, not with things happening. I mean, if we take the timeline here of how things happen, not that much happens in this book. We get Mark Spitz and his team. We sort of see them as their job as patrollers or cleanup crew. Basically, they go around and kill all of the zombies that the Marines didn't, or the military didn't on their first go around over these like specific areas they're trying to block off so they can start civilization again. But there's very few scenes with that. I mean, we get the initial opening with Mark Spitz, Gary, and Caitlin. We get some time with them. There's a lot of flashbacks, especially in the middle to later half of Mark Spitz's career in the apocalypse before meeting with Gary and Caitlin and setting that team together. And they're like, it's called Happy Acres, maybe the location they're at. And so we get like the story of Mim, who is a character that Mark Spitz himself was very fond of. We get to see their relationship. We get to see his time spending with the farmhouse crew. That was pretty cool. But again, a lot of that stuff we didn't get till the second the 3/4 of the way into the book, and that whole first half, the part where I inevitably got stuck at forever. Um, that was where it was like nothing was moving. So if we take the current timeline from when the book starts to when it ends and take out even backstory, the characters go to one place, they sort of go to another place to hang out, and then spoiler alert, the wall falls and everything goes to the pot. And that's kind of all. There's not that much to it other than that as story wise. One other thing I'd like to note about the sort of structure of this story is sort of in the same vein as Beloved, we get a lot of jumping back and forth in the timeline. So here's Mark Spitz's part of his backstory. Okay, we're back to the present. We're back to the backstory. And in Beloved, I thought it was really a unique format of storytelling that worked well for that book. But I think what helped it work so well in Beloved is Toni Morrison sort of indicates to you like, hey, that we're switching because she'll put a page break or we'll start a new chapter and the chapter will start with a story from the past. The problem with Zone One is there's like two or three chapters. I guess you put into two or three parts, and there is page breaks, but sometimes you get a shift in the timeline without even a page break. So you're talking about this backstory. Okay, we're back to the future now. Next indent, and that kind of throwed me off and made me like glitch a little bit. I was like, okay, like let me get back locked into what we're doing now, especially ADHD brained as myself. That made it a little bit difficult of a reading experience there because, like I said, there's just not much warning. Like, hey, we're gonna throw it back. No, we're gonna bring it forward. It's like kind of like tennis. There's no rhythm to it. It's just like boom, boom, and then maybe there'll be an indent. Then we'll end it, or we'll put a page break, and then but next time we won't put a page break to show that the timeline's changed, and that sort of threw me off. So to conclude, this 24-hour reading challenge gone horrifically wrong. Who would I suggest this book to? One tip I would like to say, if you are wanting to approach Zone One and give this literary zombie story a try, although myself paused for a very long time before finishing the story. I do believe the story is best consumed in like one large meal, if you know what I mean by that. I wouldn't take too many breaks in the reading process. I would try to lock in and read the story as much as I can in the same setting because that helps you. That's kind of how the story's geared to be read. I guess is what I'm trying to say is like you only have the three chapter breaks or four, and you get a page break every now and then, but the story works a lot better if you try to approach it in large chunks instead of taking your time and piece by piece. It's not a book that you can bring around with you and then in between class or if you're on the bus pull it out and read it then put it down and later it's part of the timeline thing I mentioned. It doesn't really help its case of being something you can put down and pick back up easily. But who I specifically would suggest this book to, I would say if you're a huge zombie junkie, if you're very interested in that genre, I think this is a fresher take on the zombie story. It's sort of, I would say its niche is that's realistic. Um, you don't have people, driving cars after the apocalypse has been going on for like 4, 5, or 6 months, like in The Walking Dead, or how they still have ammo. This is realistic, and so that's one appeal to it, I would say, for the zombie enthusiast. Maybe get a real look at how the apocalypse will be if it does befall us. Who else? I think if you're a fan of literary fiction, and you're looking for something, to expand your taste, read something about zombies, but it's also literary, I would suggest this book because yes, it does zombies. Zombies are sort of how the culture has changed because of the zombies is super, or how the culture stays the same as well. Sort of the human condition is a big part of the narrative of the story, and zombies are impacting that, of course. So, if you're a literary guy or gal or person and you want to read Zombies Literary Edition, then I would also give this book a try. But thank you guys for watching. Um, Sorry you didn't get this video 4 or 5 months ago, but uh, you know, like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope everyone is having a lovely Sunday, and we'll see you in the next one.